The diplomatic and political implications of designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern. On October 31, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump announced the redesignation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, CPC, under the International Religious Freedom Act, IRFA, of 1998. This move places Nigeria alongside nations like China, Iran, North Korea, and Saudi Arabia on a list of countries deemed responsible for or tolerant of systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedom. Trump's statement on Truth Social highlighted an existential threat to Christianity in Nigeria, citing the deaths of thousands of Christians at the hands of radical Islamists, including groups like Boko Haram and Fulani militants. This designation, first applied to Nigeria in December 2020 during Trump's initial term and later removed by the Biden administration, reignites a contentious debate over religious persecution in Africa's most populous nation. With Christians and Muslims each comprising roughly 46% of Nigeria's 230 million people, the CPC status underscores deep-seated tensions exacerbated by insurgency, ethnic conflicts, and government inaction. But what does this mean for Nigeria's stability, economy, and international standing? This article explores the multifaceted implications, drawing on reports from the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, USCIRF, human rights organizations, and Nigerian government responses. Nigeria's religious landscape has long been marked by violence, particularly in the North and Middle Belt regions. Since 2009, the Islamist insurgent group Boko Haram and its splinter, the Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAP, have killed over 37,000 people, displacing millions. In the first 7 months of 2025 alone, more than 7,000 Christians were reportedly killed, an average of 35 per day, often in targeted attacks on villages, churches, and displacement camps. Fulani herdsmen, some affiliated with jihadist ideologies, have been accused of using religious rhetoric to justify assaults on predominantly Christian farming communities, leading to accusations of ethnic cleansing. The USCIRF has recommended CPC status for Nigeria annually since 2009, citing not only non-state actor violence, but also government failures, inadequate security responses, enforcement of blasphemy laws in 12 northern states, which carry the death penalty and disproportionately affect Christians and Ahmadis, and impunity for perpetrators. Blasphemy convictions, such as the 2022 sentencing of a Christian singer to death for a song deemed insulting to Islam, exemplify state-tolerated violations. Broader human rights concerns compound the issue. Human Rights Watch's 2025 World Report documents extrajudicial killings by security forces, forced abortions in counterinsurgency operations, and crackdowns on protests under treason charges. Freedom House rates Nigeria as partly free, noting restrictions on press freedom and child soldier recruitment by both militants and vigilantes. Despite these, the Nigerian government insists the violence is driven by resource competition and banditry, not religion, and points to over 13,500 terrorists neutralized since May 2023. Under IRFA, the U.S. Secretary of State, delegated authority from the President, designates CPCs based on USCIRF recommendations. The label applies to countries engaging in or tolerating severe violations, such as torture, prolonged detention, or denial of life and liberty on religious grounds. Nigeria's 2025 redesignation follows lobbying by U.S. lawmakers like Rep. Riley Moore and Senator Ted Cruz, who introduced resolutions, H-Resm 220 and the Nigeria Religious Freedom Accountability Act, urging action. Trump tasked Moore and House Appropriations Chairman Tom Cole with investigating the slaughter of Christians. Nigeria's response was swift and defiant. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, via spokesperson Kimiebi Ebienfa, rejected the claims as inaccurate and misleading, emphasizing interfaith harmony and constitutional protections for religious freedom. Nigerians of all faiths have long lived, worked, and worshipped together peacefully, the statement read, while committing to ongoing counter-terrorism efforts under President Bola Tinubu. The Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, however, welcomed the spotlight, urging stronger government action against attacks. Diplomatic and political implications. The CPC designation is primarily a diplomatic tool, signaling U.S. condemnation and notifying Congress to pursue non-economic measures first, such as enhanced monitoring or special envoys. It could lead to increased pressure on Nigerian leadership. The U.S. might condition aid on reforms, including security sector training to protect religious minorities and repeal of blasphemy laws. USCIRF advocates redirecting foreign assistance toward conflict resolution and prosecuting perpetrators. Trump's involvement, echoing his 2020 actions, may embolden evangelical U.S. constituencies, but strain ties with Nigeria's government, which views it as politicized. Global ripple effects. Allies like the UK and EU, already critical of Nigeria's human rights record, may align with U.S. policy, amplifying calls for accountability. Conversely, it risks portraying Nigeria as a failed state, deterring investors and complicating regional counterterrorism cooperation in the Lake Chad Basin. Domestic polarization. In Nigeria, the label could inflame ethnic and religious divides, with northern Muslim leaders decrying it as anti-Islamic bias, while southern Christians see it as overdue validation. Amnesty International warns it might exacerbate vigilante violence if not paired with inclusive dialogue. Economic and security ramifications. While sanctions are a last resort, exhausted only after non-economic options fail, the threat looms large for Nigeria's oil-dependent economy. The U.S. provides over $500 million in annual aid, much for health and security. Restrictions could halt counterinsurgency support, weakening efforts against Boko Haram. Cruz's bill proposes targeted sanctions on officials enabling attacks, potentially freezing assets and travel bans. On security, the designation highlights government shortcomings: slow responses to attacks, porous borders allowing jihadist influx from Mali and Niger, and military abuses like extrajudicial killings. Positive incentives, such as U.S.-funded training, could bolster forces, but failure to act might embolden militants, spilling violence into neighboring countries. For ordinary Nigerians, the designation amplifies a humanitarian crisis: 3.3 million internally displaced persons, IDPs, many Christians in camps targeted for attacks. It could unlock more U.S. funding for IDP protection and interfaith programs, but escalation risks worsening food insecurity and child trafficking. Socially, it challenges Nigeria's narrative of unity, potentially fostering resilience through civil society, but also deepening mistrust if perceived as foreign meddling. Designating Nigeria as a CPC is a bold rebuke to inaction amid a religious freedom crisis that has claimed tens of thousands of lives. It offers leverage for reforms, ending impunity, reforming blasphemy laws, and securing borders, but risks economic fallout and diplomatic friction if mishandled. As USCIRF Chair Vicky Hartzler noted, U.S. government foreign assistance should support efforts to protect religious freedom. For Nigeria, the path forward lies in inclusive governance under Tinubu, transforming global scrutiny into domestic accountability. Failure to do so could entrench division, but success might model religious coexistence in a volatile region. The world watches. Will this be a turning point, or another chapter in Africa's enduring strife?